Hello, everyone. This is Marty Poniatowski of AMD, and I have the pleasure today of having a discussion with Mr. Shannon Terry, the Chief Advanced Analytics Officer at Nationwide Insurance. Hello, Shannon, and welcome.
Good morning, Marty. Thank you for the time today, and thanks for the audience.
Yeah, I really enjoyed our discussion the other day when we were talking about the topics we bring up today. So I think, first of all, I'll jump right into it, Shannon. I just introduced you, sir, by your title and your firm only. You have a very impressive background. I was hoping you could take a couple minutes and tell everybody about all the great work that you and your team have done and how it fits into the Nationwide Insurance objectives. It's all yours, Shannon.
Sure. Thank you, Marty. Chief Advanced Analytics Officer at Nationwide. First off, maybe I'll touch on that advanced word. The advanced word gets a lot of questions, like what exactly does that mean? And the way I like to explain it is fairly low key. You can think about the word advanced just meaning that we're using contemporary math. So our company is nearly 100 years old. We're founded in 1926, and for 98 years, we've been built on data and math. And so none of this is really new to us, but of course, right, AI, machine learning has created the so-called new math, if you will. And that's really afforded us a lot of opportunities to do what we do, in the mission of serving our customers and protecting people, right? It's let us do that a little more effectively. So our company's mission is to protect people, businesses, and futures with extraordinary care. And so this is really foundational to what we do. I lead a team of close to 140 PhD level, master's level associates. They're from a variety of disciplines, and we work on problems across the entire enterprise. These would be problems in underwriting, pricing, but also things such as sales, distribution, and of course claims, right? And looking at how we settle claims, which is really the fulfillment arm of our business. My background actually started off in social research, and I was very interested in math and statistics and applying that to social problems. Was a young idealist, as many folks are when they're in college in the 80s. And when I got out of school, we were at a pivotal point when computers, which I had learned to program largely because of my interest in math and the analysis of data, programming computers actually became my first career track. And so actually my first official job was working at a small startup as a programmer, working on low-level drivers and things of that sort. And I really stayed on that career track in technology for many years. But of course, right, things changed as we got into the 90s. We had the emergence of data warehousing, information systems, and of course, right, by the time we got into the 2000s, right, you see ubiquitous, pervasive computing, the cloud. And so really taking my background in technology programming and data architecture to this next level was pretty natural, sort of all of the things that I love and I'm passionate about, and bringing that again to serve the mission of our company here at Nationwide. I think the way to think about the work today is, again, it's just using data and math to do what we've always been doing. But happy to talk about that more with you, Marty.
That's fantastic. What a great, yeah, very impressive background, Shannon. Thank you for that overview. I want to get to data in a minute, but first of all, just to loosen it up a little bit, I'd like you to share with the audience, please, a fun fact about yourself, Shannon. We're always all business in these interviews, and I always like to, everybody has such interesting backgrounds. I'd love to hear a fun fact about you.
Sure, sure. I was very interested in guitar when I was young, and my father played guitar. His father before him had played guitar. Mostly they played bluegrass and country. I was very interested in rock and metal, and so I was a metal guitarist in a band here in the Columbus area many, many years ago. So very different time for me, but I'm rather introverted by nature, and so it was
Hmm.
always funny, right, to think that I was part of a metal band, and we played shows in the Columbus area. So a lot of fun back then, but yeah, that's probably the fun fact for me.
That's great. That's an interesting fun fact. I love to hear that. Well, we've been having the sponsors of this interview, by the way, we've been having a lot of great lunch panel events. If there's one thing I've learned in my career is that people love going to a fine restaurant at lunch and hearing a panel share some wisdom. So in these events, I can tell you I've had a lot of them now. invariably, the first question that comes up from the audience is related to data. You brought this up. By the way, I think everybody watching this knows that you're not going to play in the AI world without some level of mathematics involved in it. But people always immediately, Shannon, bring up the data. I have to worry about data sovereignty, the locality of my data, all kinds of topics related to it, including the integrity. So I'd love to hear how your team and Nationwide in general addresses the data challenge because it's everywhere. You mentioned data warehousing, by the way. That was, you know, it just white hot for a long time, and people have accumulated the data. But how does that work into your team's advanced analytics work? And how do you access the data and make sure that everything pertaining to your AI workloads uses solid data?
Right. Yeah. Thanks for the question, Marty. First off, I'd say the data is so important to what we do because we're not making a traditional manufactured good or product, right? Our
Right.
our product, right, in a colloquial sense, is really a promise of sorts, right? It's instantiated through policies and contracts, right? Insurance policies or perhaps annuity contracts on our financial services side. But I think in a colloquial sense, right, we can think about that as a promise. And when you're manufacturing things from data, right, and your business is inherently predicated on trust, it's important, right, that you treat that data with all due respect. But we have to have data that lets us segment and price, right, do underwriting, do technical pricing, of course, and then also help us with claims fulfillment and guarding against fraud, things of that sort, right? So the whole spectrum of insurance and financial services activities. Um, but I would say, right, you always start you've got to think about data strategically as an asset, right? And we often talk about assets, and you can think about an asset that maybe appreciates in value over time. And I think you'll be hard pressed to talk about any enterprise asset at your company or any company that won't appreciate more than data over time.
Right.
So the data we have today will be parlayed into future products and services to protect our members, our customers, our business partners in the future. And so we want to make sure that we're capturing, curating, performing hygiene on that data, and of course treating the data as if it were our own. And so I think having a really comprehensive data strategy that considers all of those sort of dimensions is imperative. And of course, right, you're trying to integrate and, of course, find patterns in the data as you go. But I'll also mention that, I sort of have a philosophy that says we don't want to just throw all the math we can and sort of bludgeon the data with compute,
Hmm.
see what we can mine out of it. Good, responsible AI really starts with disciplined problem framing, making sure you're starting with clear intentions about what you intend to do, and making sure you're using data, right, that would naturally be collected in the due course of business, right, data that's appropriate, data that's been authorized to be shared with you. And so, for example, if we're underwriting a life insurance policy, right, the level of data that someone chooses to share with you is going to be very different, of course, and the authorizations that they give you are different. But I look at data as, again, something that's just the cornerstone of everything we do. I've heard people say data is the new oil. That was I
Ah,
think Clive Humby was
yeah.
I believe the first person who said that, although on the internet it might be hard to find who the real author of that statement
Mhm.
was. But it is true in the sense that I think data in and of itself, right, it's creating this information revolution that is very much like the Industrial Revolution. But at the same time, right, the Industrial Revolution brought a lot of problems, right? You had environmental issues and many other consequences. And I think you can see the same hazards await us if we don't treat it with all the due care and respect that's warranted.
Right. And, it probably is hard to find the source of that quote, but if it's on the internet, Shannon, it must be true. It has to be true. So thank you very much for the time today. Thank you for our sponsors of this interview. And this has just been a great pleasure. Thank you very much, sir.
Marty, thank you. And thanks to our audience and our sponsors. Really appreciate the chance to talk with you today.